So what's the situation right now with the Dutch solar market?
At the moment, it's finally, I would almost say, it's booming, because there's a subsidy scheme which is available, and a lot of building owners are now aware of that, and we're even developing a lot of land-based solar in the Netherlands now as well. A lot of project developers have stepped onto that also.
We have a lot of planes here next to the airport. So what's the exact subsidy scheme, and how does that relate to utility scale solar farms versus rooftop projects like this, for example?
Okay. Well, of course, the utility scale projects do require a little more financing due to their grid connection, the fencing and everything which is required, and obviously most of that power is always put directly onto the grid. Whereas own usage, which you can do with rooftop solar, is in a financial perspective more beneficial, because you don't have the variable grid costs and the energy tax, which is also on the tax.
And you're competing with
on the energy prices.
Competing with retail electricity instead of wholesale electricity.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But this year there's the whole subsidy has 12 billion euro available, which is paid out over a number of years. It's an add-on to your power price. And we expect again that a lot of solar projects will qualify.
And what is the precise? What is the precise subsidy for a project?
Well, it's kind of a bidding scheme. So
okay.
when you require less subsidy, a couple of cents per kilowatt hour, then you stand a bigger chance of getting the subsidy than when you require, say, 13 or 14 euro cents.
So there's basically a big pot of money, and when there's a project, you bid to win the deal.
Exactly.
And how much subsidy you say you need is a deciding factor for whether or not you win the deal or not.
Indeed.
Seems like a very good way to keep the costs low while subsidizing.
Yeah.
It seems like a brilliant move. I think.
It's in a way it's a tender scheme. It's a subsidy tender scheme as well. Also, like you see that in other countries, but also for the large projects. Yeah. So the less financing you need, the bigger chance you stand in applying successfully for that subsidy.
And when did this launch?
Well, actually, this first part, first 6 billion, launched just last week, March 7.
Oh wow!
And the second part will be launched in the autumn. But it also, of course, it's one big pot. So also wind on land.
Okay.
And biomass gasification plants, they can all apply.
Okay. So
may the best man win. May the
Okay. And
we don't choose the technique.
And is there a time frame on that, or?
How do you mean?
Is there a time frame for the during which this money has to go out, or is it just open-ended?
Okay, no. For solar, the mechanism is that when you apply for the subsidy, and you get it awarded, you have to sign a contract for realization of the installation within 1 year, and then you have 3 years to build.
Oh, I just mean like the money that's available, 6 billion euros.
Yes.
This is available till it's used, right? It's not.
Correct.
There's not a.
Correct. But it's spread over time, so it's an add-on to the power price which you can get on the market, and that's paid out over 15 years.
Okay.
So it's not a purchase subsidy or anything.
And you see all the solar players moving into the Dutch market now.
Absolutely. Yes, we see German players. We see players coming from the UK market, which of course has deteriorated considerably.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you told me an interesting thing about why this is arranged. Why this is arranged how it is with these four? Is it four? No, several quadrants.
Yes, it's a 0.5 megawatt installation, and it has been procured by the developers of this building for reasons of certification. So it's not so much the power sale, which was the primary driver for these developers to have this installation on top of this logistical building. It's particularly the added value that it has for the BREEAM certification.
To sell space to potential lessees.
Yes. It's a high quality logistical building, and it can now be leased to entities which appreciate that kind of certificates for.
And they have it in their own standard, their own requirements for using green buildings, using a certain amount of renewable electricity.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. The older, cheaper buildings are even becoming. You don't want to be seen in there in China these days, do you? There's the airport. We're that close.
No, we're
that close.
I don't know how this will show on video, but it's amazing in person. The plane is right there. It's like you can almost touch it. It's pretty great. And I grew up right next to an airport with planes coming over, but this is still amazing. It's the runway strip is just right next to us.
It's right next to it. Yeah. And of course this is all acceptable in terms of glare, because that runway can also be used obviously for incoming planes. That's not an issue.
Right.
And obviously with the wind calculations have been taken in place.
And you said, there's a lot of actually empty space here. Can you explain the things you just told me about why these panels are arranged in this way?
Yes, I can indeed. Unfortunately, a lot of the modern buildings are being designed exactly within the limits that are required. So taking into account snow loads like we have in this area and wind, and we're pretty close to the coast, so snow load is never gets to. We never get too much snow at this area. So the rooftops can carry their own weight, but not a lot of extra weight. So under each of these squares, there's actually a beam which carries the roof. So that could take the weight also of the solar panels, but we couldn't get away too far from the beams, because then the roof wouldn't be able to carry this weight. So that's a shame, because you see more and more with these huge logistical buildings, especially the ones which in the centers don't have these vertical beams. These roofs cannot basically carry the extra weight. So we're waiting for the rolls of solar panels to cover all the areas.
And you highlighted that you face the solar panels to the south to
Yes.
maximize electricity generation, instead of how we often see on rooftops where they're all just matching the borders of the building, kind of like blocks in a kid's toy, we both have young kids, so
That's it.
that's where my analogies come from now. There's another
So if you want to cover the roof completely, then this doesn't make sense, because then you lose a lot of space on the sides.
If you're
You
able
have extra
to
space anyway. You position them in the most optimal manner in terms of output. Yeah.
So you've got some pretty large Canadian solar panels. Why did you choose these?
Well, as part of the tender procedure, we obviously took into account which installers could put this kind of volume on this particular roof, taking into account all the weight limitations as well. So, for instance, we also considered some thin film panels with one of the installers, but they're glass panels and their weight per square meter is much higher. So we wouldn't be able to put this volume on this rooftop. So that was the juggling that all the various developers had to come up with, and this turned out to be the best combination of panels and framing.
And cost, I'm sure. Canadian
Indeed,
Solar's
yes, absolutely.
Been near the top of the charts for a few years now, so they must really offer a good cost.
Well, they did. We asked three companies which install these, which have a track record of installing this kind of size of installations to make an offer.